It's time to learn how to use the midpoint formula, and you'll never guess what it does if it finds the midpoint. So here's our first example. In this case, we have a point A and we have a point B, and we need to find the midpoint of those 2 points. So to use the midpoint formula, you actually don't need a graph at all, but I'm going to show you what it looks like on a graph first so you know what on earth we're even doing. So I'm going to go ahead and plot these 2 points on our graph. Remember that X is left and right and Y is up and down. So in this case, A would be 1 square to the right and 6 squares up, and B would be 3 squares to the right and 2 squares up. So what the question is asking is, if we were to draw a line in between these 2 points, then what would be the point that goes exactly in the middle? And in this case, that would be our midpoint, which I'll put M for midpoint. It's basically asking what are the coordinates of the point that would split this evenly in half, where you have half on this side and half on the other side. Now on a graph, you might just be able to visualize this and like count the boxes. But in this case, we're going to be using a formula that lets us do this without a graph. So here is the midpoint formula. We have, it's in parentheses just like before, and we have a comma. So this is going to give us our first number right here, and this is going to give us our second number. So our first number is x1 plus x2 over 2, and our second number is y1 plus y2 over 2. Now, if there's one thing I hate about math, it's just memorizing formulas just as a bunch of random letters without understanding what it actually means. So if you look at this first section here, this is going to be the x value of our new point, because remember it goes x and then y. So we get the x of our new point, our midpoint, by taking the two x's of the other points and then adding them together and dividing by 2. And you might be able to recognize that that's the same thing as taking an average. So for example, if you wanted to take the average of, let's say, 4 and 6, you would add 4 and 6, 4 plus 6 is 10, and then divide by 2, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. So the average of 4 and 6 is 5. So what this like complicated formula is literally just saying is find the number right in the middle of 1 and 3. So here's how to use the midpoint formula and any formula. You just rewrite the formula, but you plug in the numbers that you know. So in this case, x1 and x2 are going to be the x values of our points. And because we're adding them together, it doesn't matter what order you do it in. So you could say that 3 is x1, or you could say that 1 is x1, it doesn't matter. But we're adding x1 and x2. In this case, that's 1 plus 3. And then we're dividing it by 2. Our second section is going to be y1 plus y2, which are the two y values. And remember, y comes second. So that's going to be 6 and 2. So we're going to add those together, 6 plus 2, and we're going to divide them by 2. And now we just simplify what we have. So 1 plus 3 is 4. And then 6 plus 2 is 8. And now these are actually fractions that we can simplify as well. So here we have 4 over 2. Remember that fractions are the same thing as division. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. And then 8 divided by 2 is 4. Which means that our midpoint here is 2, 4, and that's going to be our answer. So here's another example, and this one's going to be slightly different. Instead of having the 2 points and then finding the midpoint of it, we're given 1 point, and we're given the midpoint, and we need to find the other side of the point. So whereas before we had 2 points, and then we're just trying to find what the point in the middle is. This time we have 1 point and then the point in the middle, and we're trying to figure out the point on the other side. So on the other side of the midpoint. So to do this, we're still going to use the midpoint formula. It's just going to work a little bit differently. So we're going to break this apart into just the x part and the y part. So for this, we're just going to focus on the x right now. So we're going to use this just like a formula. We're going to plug in what we know. So we know that x1 is -2 because that's the x of the point that we know. And that's going to be plus x2. And now be careful, don't plug in 1 for x2 because that's actually not the second point. That's the midpoint. We're trying to find the second point right now. We're trying to find D. But right now we don't know what that is. So we're just going to leave this as x2. And that's going to be over 2. Now there is actually one more thing that we know. We know that this little formula here is going to be equal to the midpoint because this is the midpoint formula. And in this case, the x of our midpoint is going to be 1. So this whole thing is going to be equal to 1. And now we can go ahead and solve this just like an algebra problem. Now, if you don't quite remember how to solve for x in an algebra problem, I do have a video on it that you can watch on the card on the screen right now, but I'll also go over it here. Basically, we need to get x2 by itself, but this fraction is in the way. It's on the top of a fraction. So to get rid of this fraction, we're going to do the opposite of division, which is multiplication, and multiply both sides by 2. Because remember that fractions are just the same thing as division. So these cancel out, and on the left side, we just have -2 plus x2, And on the right side, we have 1 times 2, which is 2. And now we just have a one-step algebra problem because the only thing in its way, the only thing in x's way, is this minus 2. So to get rid of the minus 2, we'll do the opposite of minus, which is plus, and add 2 to both sides. These cancel out, and we're running out of room here, but I'll just move it over here. On the left side, we have x2. And on the right side, we have 2 plus 2, which is 4. And remember that we don't have to get rid of this tiny 2 because the tiny 2 is just telling you that it's the second x point. So it goes with x. So this means that our second x is going to be 4. So let's just go ahead and make a note of that. So d is going to be equal to some point, right? There's going to be an x and a y, and we just found out that the x is going to be 4. So now let's go ahead and figure out what the y is going to be. So we're going to find this out the same exact way. We're just going to use the y section now. So the y section is y1 plus y2 over 2. Now y1 is equal to the y of the first point. And this is the first point. The y is negative 3 because the x was negative 2. So this is going to be negative 3 plus y2. And remember that y2 is not negative 2 because this is the midpoint. y2 is going to be this number here, which is the one that we're looking for right now. So we're going to leave this as y2. And then that's going to be over 2. And now remember that because this is the midpoint formula, it's going to be equal to our midpoint. And the y of our midpoint is negative 2. So this is equal to negative 2. So now we'll just solve this like an algebra problem just like before. So again, y2 is trapped in the top of a fraction. So to get rid of the bottom of the fraction, and since fractions are the same thing as division, we'll do the opposite of division, which is multiplication, and multiply both sides by 2. So the 2's cancel out. And on the left side, we just have negative 3 plus y2. And on the right side, we have negative 2 times 2. Well, 2 times 2 is 4. And we have one minus sign, so the minus sign sticks. And now we just have a one-step problem. The only thing in y2's way of being by itself is this minus 3. So we need to do the opposite of minus, which is plus, and add a 3 to both sides. So these cancel out. And I'll move it over here again. On the left side, we have y2, and on the right side, we have negative 4 plus 3. So for negative numbers, think of it like dollars. You lost $4, and then you got 3 back, but you're still down 1. So negative 4 plus 3 is negative 1. And there you go. This is y2. The y of our point here is negative 1. So let's go ahead and put that up here. So based on the two problems that we did, we figured out that the x is 4 and the y is negative 1. So we found point D. Point D is 4, negative 1. So now you know how to use the midpoint formula to get this. Find a midpoint. But the midpoint formula goes hand in hand with another formula that's pretty similar, and it's called the distance formula. So if you want to learn how to use that formula, you can watch this video right here. And as always, if you have any questions about this video, go ahead and leave it in the comments, and I'll be sure to answer your question. Thanks for watching.